Chapter 71, Divine Punishment. Sizzle, sizzle. A violent spiritual chi stimulation suddenly emitted from the black zombie's body. The expression of the parasite Guowen changed drastically as he tore off the black zombie's clothes. Underneath were densely packed three-colored talismans. Triple attribute wind, fire, and earth spirit talisman traps. It was the talisman trap that the sect cultivators had placed on the corpses during the battle in the Mother River. It was what Jiang Li had asked Yan Hong to purchase for him before leaving the sect. This kind of thing was most suitable for making human bombs. Guowen screamed in terror, "Stop, kill us and you will die, everyone will die." However, Jiang Li's method of setting the talisman paper trap was still rusty. Once it was activated, there was no room for regret. Moreover, he had no intention of listening to his enemy. "So you guys feel fear too?" He only had time to control the black zombie to say this last sentence before the terrifying spiritual chi exploded. In the confined space, the power of the talisman trap was perfectly displayed. Terrifying pressure and temperature erupted. In the underground cave, dozens of Scripture Storage Valley disciples died instantly. If a Foundation establishment cultivator were to defend with all their might, there was a chance that they could survive such an explosion. However, the abandoned Foundation establishment bodies had all their strength sucked dry. How could they withstand such power? As for the disciples who had just replaced their bodies, they were only at the mid or late stage chi refinement realm and had not established their Tao foundation. They were unable to resist at all. On the ground, Jiang Li, who had just arrived from afar, saw that the large tree on the ground was instantly blasted by the flames. A blast wave that carried a heat wave assaulted his face, and it roasted his hair until it curled up slightly. He braved the heat and approached. The soil on the ground was still emitting a scorching temperature. Rain droplets the size of beans splattered on it and instantly vaporized. At the spot where the tree disappeared, the originally sealed underground cave had its cover lifted, revealing the sky. Although he had seen the explosion of such a talisman trap through the black zombie's perspective, he still marveled at it with his own eyes. It was a pity that the black zombie was really dead this time. With a wave of his hand, the pitch-black chain flew out from nearby. It automatically circled around his body a few times before wrapping around Jiang Li's waist. On the chains were the last two full soul-capturing bags. At that time, the probability of the black zombie exploding was too high, so Jiang Li naturally could not leave anything on it. After putting all the souls into the coffin, Jiang Li hurriedly jumped into the pit to search. The inner sect disciples were all wealthy people. Although the explosion just now was fierce, the body of a Foundation establishment cultivator was not that easy to destroy completely. Moreover, there was a high chance of getting the magic artifacts they used. This was a considerable amount of wealth. The self-destruction this time not only consumed the spirit talisman trap worth hundreds of spirit stones, but also destroyed the black zombie that Jiang Li had nurtured for a long time. Of course, that black zombie's combat ability was ordinary, and it was gradually unable to keep up with Jiang Li's battle. However, after the incident at the Mother River, Jiang Li had obtained quite a bit of yin corpse blood. After injecting the yin corpse blood into the black zombie's body, it actually allowed its stiff body to become agile again. Coupled with the zombie puppet technique, the five senses technique, and the cover of the wood armor technique, it could already be used as a convenient puppet. To be honest, he felt a little heartache to lose it just like that. Facing such losses, if he did not plunder sufficient loot, it would be a huge setback to him. When Jiang Li was searching for loot in the pit, a voice sounded above his head. "You sent the signal." Jiang Li raised his head and saw 3 sect elders rushing over together. "Elders, the 11 traitors are all here." He held a tattered corpse in his hand. He stepped on the wall of the pit and easily jumped back to the ground. He threw the corpse to the ground and cupped his hands to the 3 elders. Perhaps due to the collision, a slightly deformed token immediately rolled out of the corpse. The corpse's white hair had already been completely burned away. The clothes on its body were severely damaged, and it could be vaguely seen that it was indeed white. At the chest area, there was a storage word that was half burned away. One of the elders raised his hand, and the token landed in his hand. The other two jumped down from the hole and chose a few intact corpses. After a simple inspection, they confirmed that there were indeed a few traitors in the inner sect. "You did well, did you find Duan Shuang?" one of the elders asked. Jiang Li cursed in his heart. If he really met that elder, how could he still be alive? However, he did not show it on his face but replied humbly, "Elder, I didn't find him." Boom! Jiang Li had yet to finish speaking when an extremely terrifying thunderclap suddenly resounded in the sky. In the thick, dark clouds that had been churning for 3 days, countless lightning serpents slithered crazily, weaving a silver net that could light up the entire city. Jiang Li's face suddenly turned ghastly pale, and his vision was blurry while his limbs were powerless. A strand of silent terror suddenly enveloped him. It seemed like no matter where he was, he would be unable to escape death. Enshrouded by the divine punishment lightning tribulation cloud. Added status, pressure of the lightning tribulation. Pressure of the lightning tribulation, all attributes lowered by 70%. Duration, 2 hours, minus plus. Jiang Li thought to himself, divine punishment, lightning tribulation. That guy said that he would die if he killed all of them. Was that what he meant? FCK, but those guys practically massacred the entire city. Shouldn't killing them be enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens? Why would there be a lightning tribulation? Jiang Li looked at the 2 notifications and was stunned. The 3 sect elders were also confused. Damn it, lightning tribulation. It's the lightning tribulation. That Duan Shuang bastard. Did he kill 10,000 people? He actually triggered the lightning tribulation. Fool, such a huge lightning tribulation. How can only 10,000 people die? Damn it, damn it, damn it. I should have known, I should have known. This is the tribulation cloud of the lightning tribulation. That guy tricked us, who would have thought, which tribulation cloud could condense for 3 days before striking. Damn it. Duan Shuang, you and it $. What did you do? Under the envelopment of the tribulation clouds, the expressions of the 3 elders were rather ugly. As they conversed, they cursed with every sentence. All right, 500 disciples are still in the city. If all of them die, we will really become sinners. We must dismiss the disciples as soon as possible. The tribulation hasn't started yet. Once it begins, no one can escape. Duan Shuang, find him and kill him. The divine punishment will end if he dies. Oh right, hey, what's your name? The 3 elders scratched their heads anxiously. As they spoke, they finally recalled Jiang Li, who was still at the side. Elder, my name is Jiang Li. Spiritual flames appeared on the elder's hand. He pressed the slightly deformed inner sect disciple token in his palm a few times before raising his hand to throw it to Jiang Li. After some thought, he took out a talisman from his pocket and threw it at Jiang Li. Jiang Li, you're an inner sect disciple now. This is my treasure. Take it and run, don't die. Chapter 72, Armored Horse Divine Travel. Affected by the ancient Armored Horse Talisman. Added status, Armored Horse Divine Travel. Armored Horse Divine Travel. Increase movement speed by 1000%. Duration, 10 minutes minus plus. Jiang Li had just received his inner sect disciple token when a special purple talisman paper landed on his body. In an instant, an invisible force overflowed from the talisman paper and poured into his body in a barbaric manner, especially his long legs. He could not help but grunt at the strange feeling. That force was extremely powerful, but it did not cause him any harm. Jiang Li felt as if a hydrogen balloon had been squeezed into his body, and his body weight was so light that he could barely feel it. The sudden weight loss made Jiang Li feel light and unstable. He could not help but take a step to the side. However, Jiang Li's foot suddenly erupted with an unfamiliar and powerful force without any warning. His entire body was actually flipped over by that force, and with a bang, he directly smashed into the neighboring residence. Jiang Li. The three elders. It was that elder again. He speechlessly pulled Jiang Li out from the pile of rubble. He said after placing him on the main road of Cloud Stream City, "Don't try to turn. You don't have the ability to control the power of the armored horse talisman. Run straight in this direction." The elder pointed out a direction for Jiang Li. According to the map of Cloud Stream City that Jiang Li had noted down, he should reach the northern city gate from this direction. "Thank you, elder." Jiang Li was also shocked by the scene earlier. He had naturally seen the notification on the interface. The 1000% speed increase surprised him greatly. That was the status with the greatest increase so far. Jiang Li was already very surprised that this elder gave him the inner sect disciple token so readily. Now he even used such a powerful ancient talisman paper on him. This made Jiang Li, who was used to being cheated, feel even more overwhelmed. Could it be that a mere change in identity could make these elders' attitude towards him change so drastically? Jiang Li did not understand this, but he did not have the time to care about anything else. It was good for him that the sect kept its promise. After all, this was also considered an outer sect competition. Regardless of the grade of the spiritual root, whether it was the mid-stage Qi refinement realm or the late-stage Qi refinement realm, as long as he won, he would be admitted to the inner sect. This was not a big deal. After thanking that elder again, Jiang Li slowly released the hands that were grabbing his pants. It was as if he was afraid that the legs would run away by themselves. The principles behind this armored horse talisman were unknown, but the exaggerated speed increase was clearly not something that a disciple in the Qi refinement realm could master. Right now, Jiang Li could still feel and control his legs, but that was only when they were not moving. His speed was raised 10 times in an instant. It was not something he could adapt to so easily. Right now, the tribulation clouds above his head were still churning. He did not have the time to familiarize himself with the power of the armored horse talisman. He could only follow the instructions of that elder and did not even think about turning around. After calming down for a moment, he took a step forward. Whoosh! Jiang Li practically transformed into an afterimage as he shot forward. In just 2 steps, he had crossed more than 20 meters and stepped on the puddle that was more than half the height of a person. However, Jiang Li did not fall into the water because of this. Instead, a huge splash exploded beneath his feet as he continued to walk on the water. He ran into the distance as if he was flying, and his speed did not decrease at all. "Old Zhang, that's an ancient talisman, right? You're really generous." An elder raised his hand and shot out rays of white light towards the sky. That was the signal to inform the outer sect disciples to retreat. His expression was solemn, but his mouth was still busy talking. He was surprised by Elder Zhang's generosity. Since he completed the mission, he's an inner sect disciple. No matter what, we can't let him die here easily. That talisman's crafting method is special and can't be replicated. It's useless to us. Why not let him use it? It can protect his life and be considered as our aid to the outer sect disciples. Everyone knew how dangerous this mission was. If someone failed to join the inner sect and died here, the enthusiasm of the outer sect disciples would undoubtedly be a huge blow. Another elder looked at the huge hole that Jiang Li created and said, "You're right. Moreover, I think that Jiang Li's natural talent is not bad. Perhaps he can achieve something by joining the inner sect in the future." Ordinary people, even with the armored horse talisman, would at most be slightly faster. They would not be able to achieve such an effect. Moreover, they had seen the situation in the huge pit just now. Other than the 11 rebels, there were also many outer sect disciples who had died here. However, not only did Jiang Li survive, he even successfully killed 11 rebels. Although he did not know the details, Jiang Li definitely had something extraordinary about him. However, this was not the time to discuss Jiang Li's talent. All outer sect disciples, leave the city immediately. The sect's flying ship is already waiting outside the city. Spiritual chi wrapped around the sound waves as it spread out. The white retreat signal in the sky was extremely eye-catching. However, the meaning behind this shocked all the outer sect disciples in the city. They were in the city, so they had heard the explosion just now. It was not as if they had not seen the rolling thunderclouds in the sky. The sudden pressure of the lightning tribulation affected them more than Jiang Li. Now, each and every one of them was under extremely terrifying suppression. From their bodies to their cultivation levels, they had already fallen to roughly the level of mortal martial artists. When they heard the shout of the sect elders, they walked out of their temporary houses with desolate expressions. Because their feet were constantly trembling, they could not run fast even if they wanted to. This was especially true for the group of outer sect disciples who had always been staying in the city lord's mansion. They were located in the center of the city and were the furthest from the city gate. At this moment, with their bodies weak and their legs trembling, the vast sea in front of them became a natural chasm that separated them from the path to survival. Perhaps many of them did not know what lightning tribulation was, but the fear that came from their biological instincts was enough to let them know that if they stayed any longer, they would definitely die. Boom, boom. At this moment, two loud sounds came from afar. Then the water in the city started to decrease at a visible speed. Soon, it reached the point where they could walk normally. It was the three elders who had relied on their own Tao techniques to forcefully break through the ground and draw the water in the city into the underground river, using this to create a chance for the outer sect disciples. After some discussion, the three of them decided not to send the flying ship into the city. Although it was quicker, the drawback was even more obvious. The might of such a lightning tribulation was incomparably terrifying. To a chi refinement realm disciple, the damage caused by a single lightning tribulation was undoubtedly fatal. Lightning tribulations could not strike consecutively, so even if the lightning tribulation began, they would not be targeted by the divine punishment. Since they would only face the aftermath of the tribulation, even with the unlucky deaths of a portion of the people, the others still had a chance of escaping the tribulation cloud's range. But if everyone was taken into the flying ship, they would be separated. Once the lightning tribulation suddenly started, it would discover such a group of ants gathering together and not leaving the range of the tribulation cloud. If they flew to such a height, it would probably be seen as provoking the lightning tribulation, and the airship would be shot ruthlessly. At that time, the casualties would be even greater. Chapter 73, Anomaly with the Souls. Due to the timely actions of the sect elders, a large amount of water was expelled from the city. The outer sect disciples walked out of the streets in groups and ran out of the city as quickly as they could. At this moment, Jiang Li, who should have charged out of Cloud Stream City first, suddenly paused for a moment while running at high speed. This pause lasted for a very short time, but it was enough to destroy his body's balance under his extreme speed. He was thrown out by the inertia that he could not control and rolled a distance before barely stopping. Jiang Li carefully stood up. The dark color on his skin slowly faded. If he had not defended in time, he would have fallen to the ground. He took out a small coffin from his bosom. It was this coffin that had suddenly produced a force that tugged at Jiang Li, causing his balance to be destroyed. That shouldn't be the case. Didn't I already refine this coffin? How could such a thing happen? Jiang Li was a little puzzled. Right at this moment, the coffin shook once more, and a weak pulling force appeared. It pointed in the opposite direction as Jiang Li's target. What? Jiang Li was slightly surprised and bewildered. He had already sensed that the force that resisted leaving earlier was not from the coffin. To be precise, the source of that power should be the souls of the 300,000 weak souls in the coffin. They are refusing to leave the city. The lowest level of ghost souls could not express their desires, but the increasing frequency of the pulling was clearly pointing to this. Through his connection with the coffin, Jiang Li could sense that the 300,000 souls were spinning and fluttering in the small coffin space, forming a terrifying soul vortex. A human soul that had just died was insignificant, but 300,000 souls together represented a completely different meaning. Furthermore, in the center of the soul vortex formed by more than 300,000 souls, a wisp of red fog was constantly rising and spreading. Was that resentment? In the ghostwood art that Jiang Li mainly cultivated, it had mentioned this kind of red fog before. Jiang Li had also specially learned a little about this. Resentment represented uneasiness, despair, sorrow, and all other emotions that were different from the good side of humans. Every person had resentment in them, but it was extremely rare to see it materializing before the naked eye. It was said that this kind of thing could completely drive a cultivator crazy with a single breath. Even in ancient times, only the last few levels of the 18 levels of hell were covered in this red mist-like resentment energy all year round. Don't tell me these souls want revenge. There is already a lightning tribulation helping you take revenge. Don't get involved in this mess, okay? However, the unintelligent ghosts did not understand Jiang Li's comforting words at all. They only spun faster and faster in the coffin. This was awkward. The coffin in his hand was moving faster and faster. If he continued like this, his legs would be out of control, and he would not be able to escape from Cloud Stream City. Boom! Another explosion sounded in the sky. Jiang Li's face that had recovered turned pale again. The pressure of the lightning tribulation appeared again. After removing the negative status again, Jiang Li suddenly discovered that the concentration of yin qi around him seemed to have increased greatly. After being stunned for a moment, he immediately transferred the yin attribute spiritual qi into his eyes. Looking around, wisps of yin qi were floating over from the entire city, gathering more and more around the coffin. Could it be the influence of the heavenly tribulation? A city of people had died in a short period of time in Cloud Stream City, so there was naturally no lack of yin qi. If it was a cultivator who had a qi perception technique, it would not be too much to say that the yin qi in this city was soaring. However, this yin qi was clearly unable to resist the might of heaven and earth like the tribulation lightning. Once the tribulation lightning descended, the yin qi that filled the air would completely disperse. Now, could it be that the yin qi was forced out by the lightning tribulation and wanted to find a way to escape? Jiang Li suddenly had some guesses. In any case, these souls were unwilling to leave now. Perhaps they wanted to see the culprit who killed them die under the lightning tribulation before they were willing to stop. Then, if he left this coffin in the city? Jiang Li remembered that there was an annotation on the map. The Feng Shui Yin Gate of Cloud Stream City was there, in that direction. After Jiang Li adjusted his direction, he took another step forward. His body turned into an afterimage as he instantly crashed into the neighboring residence. Due to the change in direction, there was no longer a street in front of him, but row after row of residential buildings. Boom, 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 boom. Moving in a straight line at a high speed seemed to perfectly complement a charging technique like the mountain-crushing scripture. A faster speed greatly increased the force of collision. The walls made of mud, bricks, and stones were like paper as they were easily pierced through layer after layer, but Jiang Li's speed did not slow down much. Before long, Jiang Li braked again. After rolling for dozens of meters, he stopped in front of a dilapidated small temple. This was it. The Feng Shui layout of the city was also quite meticulous. Typically, they used yang buildings like the yamen and temples to suppress the yin gate. The location of the yang node was usually where prisons and execution grounds were built. The positive energy could be used to disperse the evil spirits. When he saw the small temple, Jiang Li knew that he had found the right place. With a shake of his hand, he threw the coffin in his hand. The small coffin expanded in the wind and smashed into the temple, shattering the limestone floor. Jiang Li formed another hand seal. Yin burial. The third ability of the coffin was activated. The entire coffin sank into the ground as if it had fallen into quicksand. There were no traces of soil being turned on the ground. Now he had to leave quickly. Jiang Li patted his thigh and took a deep breath before his figure transformed into an afterimage and vanished on the spot. Boom! A moment later, a third thunderclap sounded in the sky. The rainstorm suddenly became heavy. In the next moment, a thick bolt of lightning descended from the sky and struck somewhere in Cloud Stream City. The lightning tribulation had finally begun. The ground seemed to tremble as a result. Wherever the lightning struck, the soil would be charred and explode. The surrounding residences collapsed, revealing an ordinary old well in the center. Boom! Another bolt of lightning struck, and the well immediately exploded. A figure flew out. The figure did not dodge. He faced the descending tribulation lightning and continued to rise up as if he was not affected at all. When the bolt of lightning completely dissipated, two cores could be seen around him, one white and one gold, hovering above the figure's head. These two cores had blocked the full power of the lightning tribulation for him. Furthermore, the two cores were still spinning and gradually fusing. Yamen refers to the headquarters or residence of a Chinese government official or department. Chapter 74, Lightning Tribulation Golden Core Refinement. Is he crazy? He actually spat out the golden core under the lightning tribulation. Wait a minute. When did he become a golden core cultivator? As soon as the lightning tribulation began, the three elders of the scripture storage valley immediately rode their artifacts and flew out of the city. At this moment, they saw the rebel cultivator, Duan Shuang, flying into the sky while enduring the lightning tribulation. While they gritted their teeth, they also had a strong sense of doubt. Exposing the most important golden core directly under the lightning tribulation was no different from courting death. If his golden core was destroyed, what was the use of having a physical body? Furthermore, in the sect's records, Elder Duan Shuang was only in the true core realm a few days ago. How did he become a golden core cultivator in just a few days? It must be a demonic cultivation method. I really didn't expect that the talented and righteous Duan Shuang would slaughter an entire city of mortals just to cultivate a demonic technique. How unfortunate for the sect. Other than this reason, the trio could not think of any other explanation for the short-term breakthrough in his cultivation and the large-scale death of humans. Elder Zhang raised his hand and struck out a small copper mirror above his head. After it instantly collided with a fine bolt of tribulation lightning that was striking towards them, the small copper mirror erupted with brilliance and actually reflected the bolt of tribulation lightning to an empty area not far away before exploding. Immediately, they flew out of the area enveloped by the tribulation clouds of Cloud Stream City and were no longer affected by the aftershock of the lightning tribulation. The small mirror spun and flew back. It was caught by Elder Zhang, who was heartbroken and stuffed back into his bosom. The power of the scattered lightning from the lightning tribulation was naturally far inferior to the official lightning tribulation, but it was also a power that they were not willing to face easily. It can be said that he brought this upon himself to suffer the wrath of the heavens. However, for him to do such a thing and bring shame to the sect, it's truly detestable. The three elders turned to look at Duan Shuang, who was in the middle of the tribulation cloud. Their expressions were quite ugly. Although the scripture storage valley was a sect formed by rogue cultivators, they had set strict rules to restrict their disciples since they established their own sect. Over the past 200 years, sect cultivators rarely did anything outrageous. Instead, they often did things like slaying demons and devils to protect mortals. In the four major sects of the Great Mountain region, their reputation had always been good, second only to the Shu Mountain Five Elements Peak and Benevolent Travel Temple. They were at least ranked in the top three. This time, such a vicious demonic cultivator appeared in the sect. The reputation of the cultivation world would definitely be greatly affected. As they watched the tribulation lightning strike Duan Shuang's head one after another, they only felt a sense of satisfaction in their hearts. They wished that the divine punishment lightning tribulation would directly reduce their opponent to ash. Old Chen, what's wrong with you? With such a great punishment, even if he becomes a golden core cultivator, he definitely won't survive. Elder Jiang suddenly discovered that the other elder among the three had not spoken since Duan Shuang appeared. His expression was solemn, and it was unknown what he was thinking. Look at the other zombie core above his head. With the three elders' cultivation levels, it was not difficult for them to cross half a city to see the two cores above Duan Shuang's head. The golden one with a hint of black qi was naturally his golden core. However, the other one was the same size as the golden core and was completely pale white in color. Thick corpse qi surged around it that could not be melted. It was the golden core, zombie demon's zombie core that he had snatched a few days ago. The other two elders only felt that Duan Shuang's artifact must have been damaged in the previous pursuit. At this moment, he had no other way to resist the lightning tribulation, so he released his golden core and zombie core to shield himself. However, this Elder Chen was experienced and knowledgeable. He saw some clues from this. He might not be courting death. Have you heard of the lightning tribulation core refinement? Elder Chen considered his words and said this with some hesitation. Clearly, he was not very confident. Lightning tribulation to refine the core like a pill. How is that possible? Furthermore, he doesn't have a furnace. When Elder Chen said this, the other two elders immediately did not dare to believe it. They had heard of the lightning tribulation and pill alchemy separately, but when these two completely different terms were put together, they would only subconsciously feel that it was absurd. This was divine punishment. This was a lightning tribulation. Facing this kind of tribulation, even surviving was 1,000 hardships. How could he borrow this kind of violent power of heaven and earth to refine his core? When refining the golden core with the lightning tribulation, it's not like refining spirit pills. I don't know the exact details, but according to the ancient texts, there are great horrors and great fortune under the heavenly tribulation. If he really borrows the power of the lightning tribulation to refine the zombie core and golden core together and achieve a fusion of yin-yang, we will be in big trouble. Elder Chen said what he was truly worried about. When the other two elders heard this, they also frowned deeply. Seeing the golden core and zombie core above Duan Shuang getting closer and closer, they could not help but become serious. Elder Jiang guessed what the other party meant. However, looking at the lightning tribulation that was still falling from time to time and turning the escaping outer sect disciples into ashes, he still asked hesitantly, "Elder, what do you suggest?" Although we're not completely sure, in order to prevent any accidents, we should return and kill Duan Shuang while he's distracted by the lightning tribulation. Elder Chen was quite a vicious person. He wanted to forcefully attack when he was undergoing tribulation. This was a famous kind of behavior for harming others without benefiting himself. The tribulation clouds did not know one's goal. As long as one entered the range of the tribulation clouds, they would be treated as a provocation and get attacked. The closer one was to the tribulation cloud, the more violent the lightning would be. Therefore, unless there was deep hatred between them, very few people would take the risk to do such a thing. In his heart, Elder Jiang really wanted to refuse. In a great battle between high-level cultivators, even if he won, he would have to pay a terrible price. If the lightning tribulation could directly kill the other party, that would be for the best. However, looking into the distance, the two cores floating above Duan Shuang's head did not shatter even after 7 or 8 bolts of lightning had already descended. This made him hesitate. In their impression, Elder Duan Shuang was a young and promising junior. He was never an impulsive and brainless person. This sudden defection might be because he was prepared. Duan Shuang had strangely taken the risk of attracting the wrath of the heavens and slaughtered the citizens of Cloud Stream City. Other than cultivating demonic technique, he might have deliberately attracted the heavenly tribulation. He wanted to use the tribulation lightning to refine that damned golden core of life and death. What if it was really as Elder Chen said, and the other party succeeded? The consequences would be unthinkable. Thinking of this, the elder who felt heartache for his precious artifact finally became determined. This, all right, isn't it just divine punishment? Let's strike that guy down and uphold justice. In the end, they gritted their teeth and took out their respective artifacts. The reason why the three elders were sent out by the scripture storage valley to pursue Duan Shuang was naturally because they all had the strength to suppress him. Of the three elders, two were at the Golden Core Realm and one was at the True Core Realm. With the three of them working together, even the intact Duan Shuang could only flee for his life. Now, even if Duan Shuang relied on special methods to heal his injuries, and even increase his cultivation after sacrificing the citizens in the city, he would still be able to survive. However, his artifact had been damaged during the pursuit, and he was also plagued by the divine punishment. He was definitely not their match. A bronze mirror, a bamboo umbrella, and a bracelet. These three protective artifacts floated above their heads. A thin layer of spiritual light poured down and formed a layer of spiritual chi barrier around their bodies. The three elders turned into flowing light again and rushed towards Duan Shuang in the center of the tribulation cloud. As soon as they left, the northern gate of Cloud Stream City exploded. A figure flew out of the city gate like a cannonball. A scattered bolt of tribulation lightning blasted the ground a square inch behind his feet, pushing his already absurd speed even faster from behind. As a result, Jiang Li did not lose momentum even after crashing through the city gate. Instead, he flew out for another 100 meters before ruthlessly crashing into a hard rock. The rock was smashed into pieces, and Jiang Li, who barely escaped death, spat out a mouthful of blood. Lying in the rubble, every part of his body was in pain. His body even twitched from time to time. Jiang Li opened the interface and saw that his health points had decreased by 1/5. To him, the collision just now was barely acceptable. Even if he was injured, it was at most a superficial wound. He could recover in a few breaths. However, the bolt of lightning just now was truly a little terrifying. This was still under the circumstances that he had not been hit directly. The bolt of lightning had struck the ground behind him. Just the shock of the lingering lightning bolt had already caused him such injuries. The power of that bolt of lightning was really too difficult to defend against. The defensive ability that he was proud of was simply unable to withstand a single blow from the lightning tribulation. It was penetrated in an instant. If he was really hit head-on, even he would not be spared. Fortunately, he had already left the confines of the tribulation cloud. As long as the cultivator targeted by the divine punishment did not bring the tribulation cloud to him, he should be safe. Those three rays of light are the sect elders, right? Why have they returned? Jiang Li, who was lying on his back in the rubble, just happened to see the three elders of the sect who had charged back into the city with defensive artifacts. Could it be that they want to save more outer sect disciples and kill Duan Shuang to end the divine punishment? Jiang Li thought in his heart. Even though the outer sect competition arranged by the sect this time was truly a little unfair, they probably had some expectations towards the loss of their disciples, and it was impossible for them to have the intention of sending everyone to their deaths. To the scripture storage valley, there were casualties every day. It was not a big deal if more than 10 outer sect disciples died this time. However, the 500 disciples here were the strongest 20% of the entire outer sect. If the losses were too great, or rather if all of them died, then in the next 10 years there would be a huge gap between the outer sect disciples. Even the sect could not accept this. But are all the elders of the sect so fearless? They charged forward while enduring the lightning tribulation. Looks like not all the elders are as unreliable as Elder Red Hair. Jiang Li's current health recovery speed had already reached 2 health points per second. In theory, as long as he had approximately 260 seconds, he would be able to recover from all injuries. That was less than 5 minutes. Therefore, he only lay quietly in the rubble, feeling the pain in his entire body gradually ease. He planned to admire from this angle what a top-notch battle between core formation cultivators was like. However, before long, his expression changed. Holy FCK, how unreliable. The three elders flew extremely quickly and did not take much time to approach Duan Shuang. They did not hesitate to cast their spell techniques and unleash their magic artifacts. Their attacks were extremely fierce. The three-colored spiritual light tore apart the air above Cloud Stream City like a rainbow, looking extremely magnificent and shocking. However, Duan Shuang was not a dead person. He was also a golden core cultivator and could fly, dodge, and counterattack. It did not matter if he flew, but the tribulation clouds above him also moved along with his footsteps. Golden core cultivators could move 300 meters in an instant. Under the circumstances of their intense battle, the tribulation clouds above their heads started to move about repeatedly, sometimes enveloping Jiang Li, and sometimes even moving further away. The sense of danger that appeared and vanished in an instant repeatedly stimulated Jiang Li's nerves, and it was uncomfortable to the point he almost spat blood again. Chapter 75. The first permanent negative status. Although his body was still in intense pain, if he was struck again, he would probably die here. Helpless, Jiang Li could only endure the pain and get up. He raised his leg once again and prepared to run towards the distant flying ship. Fortunately, the effects of the painkillers were still working. Although Jiang Li had only taken a normal amount of medicine, and it was not to the extent that he could not feel any pain, with such a layer of relief, at least it would not affect his movements from the pain. Wait a minute. Right when Jiang Li was about to take a step forward, he suddenly thought of something, and he carefully turned 30 degrees to the side before transforming into an afterimage and charging out. Jiang Li's speed was very fast, and his figure quickly left the vicinity of Cloud Stream City. After pulling out a safe distance, he braked again and rolled to a stop. Due to the angle that he had turned previously, Jiang Li did not directly approach the flying ship that had already landed and was waiting for him. Instead, he was 700 to 800 meters away. There was also a low mountainside as a cover, allowing him to hide himself without being discovered. Armored Horse Divine Travel, increase movement speed by 1000%, duration, infinity minus. Naturally, his idea involved the powerful buff that was just obtained. This buff could directly increase Jiang Li's current movement speed by 10 times. Although this effect only worked on running on the ground, it was hard to control and could only move forward at a uniform speed. However, even so, this Armored Horse Divine Travel was definitely a status that Jiang Li was unwilling to give up on. The effect of the talisman paper was too violent when the speed was increased by 10 times, and the current Jiang Li was utterly unable to control it. Forget about hiding his speed, he could not even walk normally. As for this ancient talisman paper, it should be able to last for a day in ancient times. It was enough for an ordinary Taoist to travel thousands of miles in a day. However, times had changed. Most of the power of this talisman had already disappeared. Even if Elder Zhang used some special methods to recharge the spiritual qi in the talisman, it could only last for 10 minutes. What would happen 10 minutes later? Or rather, what would happen after he returned the torn talisman paper to Elder Zhang? The effect of his Armored Horse Divine Travel would not disappear. Then, wouldn't his secret be exposed after taking a casual step? Jiang Li could not accept such an outcome. However, he could not accept abandoning this powerful status either. After thinking about it, there was only one solution. He had to use some negative statuses to suppress and counteract his Armored Horse Divine Travel's buff. At the very least, he had to reach a level where he could control his own speed. Jiang Li's sinful right hand reached into his bosom again and started to search. Fortunately, this was not something that he had just thought of. Before burying the coffin underground, he had already taken out this thing from inside. No, not waste pills. This time, Jiang Li took out 4 golden needles that were more than 2 feet long. That's right, these were the golden needles that the parasitized Guo and used to seal the black zombie's movements. Name: 7 golden life-locking needles. Type Dharma Artifact. Grade, medium grade, yellow rank. Note, there were 7 needles originally. This artifact should have 7 needles in a set. When combined together, it should reach high-grade yellow rank in power. However, 3 of them were stuck in the black zombie's body. When the black zombie self-destructed, they were destroyed by the powerful might of the talisman trap. Now, there were only 4 golden needles left, and they had fallen to the medium-grade yellow rank. Magic treasures were different from medicinal pills. Every single one of them was of considerable value. Jiang Li guessed that Guo and most likely did not have such wealth. This should be the magic artifact of an inner sect disciple. It had only been transferred to Guo and after he had changed his body several times. He remembered that once the golden needle pierced into the black zombie's body, the black zombie's speed would slow down. It should be a control-type artifact that limited speed. It was just right to use it now. He grabbed a golden needle and stabbed it into his thigh without hesitation. Gah! When the golden needle entered the flesh, Jiang Li deliberately avoided the thigh bone. Under the circumstances that Jiang Li did not activate his dual defense, the sharp medium-grade yellow-rank golden needle did not encounter much resistance and directly pierced through his thigh. Ouch, it hurts so much, but I won't die from this. It's fine, I have pain relief. Jiang Li watched as his thigh muscles twitched spontaneously under the stimulation, but the pain he felt was barely within his tolerance range. With a sigh of relief, he looked at the interface. 7 golden life-locking needles stabbed into the right thigh. Added status, golden life lock on the right thigh. Golden life lock, movement speed of the right leg will be reduced by 70%. Duration, 6 hours minus plus. Only 70%. Jiang Li could clearly feel that if he moved his right leg, he would still be sent flying by the strength of the armored horse. Jiang Li compared the effects of the golden needle between him and the black zombie. The effects were very different. Jiang Li was only affected by a single right leg, and the effect was far from being enough to suppress the armored horse divine travel status. But thinking about it, it made sense. He did not know how to use the complementary needle technique, so he was unable to unleash the full might of the artifact. His own strength and resistance far exceeded the black zombie, and he also had a large number of status enhancements. If there was no difference between him and the zombie, he could kill himself out of shame. But now he would have to suffer. Jiang Li sighed and picked up another golden needle. He stabbed it ruthlessly into his left thigh. 7 golden life-locking needles stabbed into both thighs. Added status, dual golden life lock on both thighs. As this was a set of artifact needles, they produced greater effect when used together. Thus, when these 2 golden needles were pierced into the legs, the effect was greater than separately using them. However, it was still not enough. 7 golden life-locking needles stabbed into both thighs. 7 golden life-locking needles stabbed into both thighs. Quadruple golden life lock. Movement speed of the legs will be reduced by 780%. Duration, 6 hours, minus plus. The 4 golden needles offset the buff of Jiang Li's armored horse divine travel by 780% increase. The remaining increase was 220%. This way, Jiang Li's movement speed would become about 3 times as fast as before. Although it was naturally very fast, with his own dynamic vision, he would only need to practice for a period of time to roughly master it. The remaining portion of the effect could only be unlocked and used after his cultivation became stronger. However, these golden needles could only lock a cultivator's speed for 6 hours. This was probably the time the 7 golden life-locking needles could last without additional spiritual chi replenishment. Jiang Li pressed for 5 seconds, and for the first time, he made a negative status last for an infinite amount of time. Quadruple golden life lock. Movement speed of the legs will be reduced by 780%. Duration, infinity, minus. If not for the fact that there was a minus button that could change the duration to 0 and remove the status, Jiang Li would not dare to do this even if he was beaten to death. After modifying it, Jiang Li removed the golden needles. Half a minute later, the 4 wounds automatically healed. Only then did Jiang Li carefully stand up. Chapter 76, Battle of the Golden Core Realm. Jiang Li moved around tentatively. His body was still extremely light. With a light tap of his foot, he could leap several meters horizontally. His movement speed was still very fast, but if he was careful, he would not fall. If he controlled himself a little more, he could already walk at normal speed. It would not be so easy to see through him. He carefully tore off the ancient armored horse talisman on his body and put it into his bosom. It was very likely that he would return this thing to Elder Zhang. However, it had to be said that the purple talisman felt better to the touch. After tidying up his things, Jiang Li trotted towards the sect flying ship that was waiting not far away. Jiang Li walked up the gangway to the deck. There were a few inner sect disciples and elders on the ship. They were looking at the distant city where the 4 of them were fighting. Over 500 outer sect disciples had yet to come out, and only Jiang Li had returned to the ship. Someone is finally back. Kid, show your token. An inner sect disciple went forward and asked Jiang Li to show his token to verify his identity. Jiang Li thought for a moment before he took out 2 tokens from his waist and handed them over. 2 tokens? There's also an inner sect token. Your name is Jiang Li. Where did you get this token from? This inner sect senior brother was dressed in black and was also a disciple of the law enforcement hall. Perhaps it was because of his usual working habits. He felt suspicious when he saw this. Could it be that this inner sect disciple token was forged by him? At this moment, the only elder present heard the keyword inner sect disciple and walked over. He took the token and verified it before returning it to Jiang Li. You're the one who completed the mission. You found the sect defectors. This elder's brain was obviously much more alert than that law enforcement disciple. He immediately hit the nail on the head. Elder, the lightning cracker in the city was indeed released by me. After the 3 elders arrived, they used a token of the defectors to refine this inner sect token for me. Jiang Li received the token and completely ignored that law enforcement disciple. He only gave an affirmative answer to the elder. In fact, chasing after traitors was the job of the law enforcement hall. It was completely within the scope of their responsibilities. However, the sect could not bear to part with the lives of the inner sect disciples, which was why the outer sect competition was changed, and 500 outer sect disciples entered the city to risk their lives to search. To be honest, these 500 outer sect disciples were actually sending themselves to death on behalf of the law enforcement hall's disciples. However, it was one thing for them to not appreciate their kindness, but it was very excessive for them to be so arrogant. Looks like you've done quite well. You'll be an inner sect disciple from now on. Remember to work harder and cultivate. After encouraging Jiang Li for a moment, the elder no longer looked at him, and he looked once more at the battle in the city. The battle between golden cores and the might of the lightning tribulation caused the entire city to tremble. All the buildings on the ground shook. In this situation, it was naturally Duan Shuang, who had fallen to the demonic path, who was at an absolute disadvantage. Duan Shuang had just broken through to the golden core realm and had used a demonic cultivation method to forcefully break through. His foundation was unstable. Relying on the wonderful balance of the yin-yang effect of the zombie core and golden core, he was barely able to keep his golden core from shattering under the lightning tribulation. Relying on tribulation lightning to refine the golden core and zombie core was extremely dangerous. The main reason why he could achieve this was because the spiritual root seed in his body was inherited from the golden core zombie demon. The zombie core and golden core were both his own items. Only then could he have some confidence in fusing the 2 cores. Once the 2 cores fused, it would become the legendary heavenly lightning indestructible zombie core. When the time came, his battle prowess would greatly increase and he would be able to resolve the siege. Where could he not go in this world? However, there could not be any mistakes in an extremely delicate matter such as fusing the golden core. If he wanted to succeed, it would only be possible if no one disturbed him. He was unlucky to have met a knowledgeable elder Chen who recognized his methods. Together with the other two elders, he withstood the lightning tribulation and attacked forcefully, catching Duan Shuang unprepared. On one hand, he had to maintain the fusion of the two cores while resisting the lightning. On the other hand, he had to divert some of his attention to deal with the three cultivators who were not weaker than him or even stronger than him. If not for the fact that his golden core Dao heart could divert his attention to multitask, and if not for the fact that his ice attribute spiritual root technique's defensive ability was outstanding, he would have probably died in the city by now. Duan Shuang probably also knew that even if he faced the enemy with his full strength, it was impossible for him to defeat the three elders. Therefore, after trying to collide a few times and injuring himself, he decisively gave up on counterattacking. Instead, he used a large amount of spiritual qi to condense a dense ice crystal shield around him. He had 2 energy cores and double the spiritual qi storage of others, which was a rare advantage in the battle. The large-scale ice crystal formation that was condensed temporarily defended against the attacks of the 3 elders' artifacts. The rebel cultivator, Duan Shuang, casually wiped away the blood that gushed out of his mouth and nose, and then began to speed up the merging of the golden zombie fusion core. Boom! At this moment, another bolt of tribulation lightning struck down. Each tribulation was stronger than the previous. If the first bolt of tribulation lightning in a tribulation cloud was only 1, then the final bolt of tribulation lightning would be 20 or even stronger. Up until now, the power of the tribulation lightning was no longer the same as before. The silver bolts of lightning had already begun to mix with blue and purple colors. At this moment, the rebel cultivator, Duan Shuang, had released more than half of his spiritual qi. The 2 golden and zombie cores were emptied, so they could no longer completely block the tribulation lightning. His entire body shook. As his body twitched, sparks flew. However, this was not the most important thing. What was most important was the 2 cores that were the essence of his origin. Crack! A crisp cracking sound rang out. The zombie core was most afraid of the yang attribute lightning and could not withstand it. A crack appeared under the violent lightning energy. But this was not the end. The cracks were still spreading, and the glass-like core was soon on the verge of breaking. Then another crack sounded. The golden core beside the zombie core also could not hold on and started to crack. Gah! The golden core and zombie core were breaking at the same time. That demonic cultivator, Duan Shuang, suffered an extremely terrifying blow. His head felt like it was about to explode. It was no longer bleeding from his 7 orifices, but blood spurting out from his 7 orifices. 7 blood pillars shot out from the 7 orifices of his head. There were even sizzling sounds. The 3 elders were immediately overjoyed, believing that the battle was about to end. In the next moment, their expressions changed drastically again. On the other hand, Duan Shuang, who was extremely miserable and had blood spurting out of his 7 orifices, suddenly looked up and laughed loudly. Ha ha ha, so that's how it is, so that's how it is. There is no creation without destruction, so that's how it is, ha 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 ha. That was because, just as the spiritual qi of the zombie core and golden core were about to be depleted, the 2 pills that had kept a distance from each other and could not touch each other for a long time finally stuck together. With the shattering point as the breakthrough point, they truly began to fuse together. That kind of fusion was clearly not ordinary. A large amount of spiritual qi and energy swarmed over. They began to use the cores that were currently fusing as the center to form a terrifying spiritual qi whirlpool that absorbed all the spiritual qi in the vicinity. Even Jiang Li, who was standing on the flying ship outside the city, sensed the abnormal flow of spiritual qi, so it could be seen how large the influence was. The ice crystal shield that was mostly shattered by the three elders started to grow rapidly under the replenishment of spiritual qi. In a short period of time, all their previous efforts were wasted. The three elders felt their hearts turn cold. They already felt that something was amiss. As the two cores gradually fused together, the bottle gourd shape gradually turned into a ball shape. The speed at which spiritual qi gathered was still accelerating. That might was so great that people who did not know would think that someone was breaking through to the nascent soul realm. The three-colored spiritual light continuously shot out. The three elders had already given up most of their defense and risked being struck by lightning to attack with all their might. However, in front of the seemingly endless replenishment of the ice crystal shield that was constantly increasing in value, it was still useless. The three of them were really suppressed by Duan Shuang, who had just broken through to the golden core realm while enduring the lightning tribulation. If this continued, when the other party really succeeded in refining the two cores, who would be the one being pursued? It was really hard to say. Swoosh! At this moment, a long rainbow suddenly pierced through the sky. The power was not inferior to the combined attack of the three elders. It was a flying ship of the sect approaching under the lightning tribulation and striking fiercely at the ice crystal formation from afar. The white sphere-like ice crystal formation seemed to have been bitten by a giant, and a large piece was suddenly missing. Looking at the other two directions of Cloud Stream City, two flying boats were also flying over. The three elders immediately reacted and flew back to the warship in three different directions. It was because they had been caught in a mistake by fetching outer sect disciples. They subconsciously believed that the flying ship could not enter the tribulation cloud's range. However, the lightning tribulation would only react to living beings. Without carrying a large number of disciples, the flying ship would not be targeted too much. A small number of lightning tribulations were still within their tolerance limit. Now was not the time to consider losses. If the warship was damaged, they could still repair it. However, Duan Shuang had to die. Looking at the exaggerated spiritual qi vortex, if they really let the other party accomplish what he wanted to do, all of them would die here. The three warships were all carrying extremely powerful arrays, with sufficient spirit stones to support the expenditure. Although the flying ship was not flexible enough, the attack power it could unleash was definitely far greater than a golden core cultivator. The three elders with the highest cultivation levels returned to the flying ship. Under their control, the flying ship's array formation emitted an even brighter light. Previously, during the battle at the Mother River, Duan Shuang had relied on the array formations on the ship to easily deal with the golden core zombie demons. At this moment, the might of the even stronger warship was naturally even more terrifying under the control of the three elders. Swoosh! Three streaks of spiritual qi shot out from the bow of the ship and struck the dense ice crystal shield. The countless ice crystals shattered instantly, revealing Duan Shuang, who was covered in blood. Swoosh! The heavenly lightning had already begun to attack the warship. There was no time to waste. Without any hesitation, the bow of the three warships lit up again. This time, they aimed directly at the heavenly lightning indestructible zombie core floating above Duan Shuang, which was almost formed. Duan Shuang should have used his agility to dodge far away, but the golden core was suspended above his head and about to be refined. He could not react immediately. Surrounded by three warships, no matter which direction he flew in, he would definitely be hit by one of the flying ships. Although his body was strong as a golden core cultivator, it was impossible for him to survive this attack. The situation took a turn for the worse. As such, he knew that his death was imminent. Duan Shuang steeled his heart and flew up to grab the golden core, stuffing it back into his mouth. Under the pursuit of the three long arcs, his figure directly plunged into the tribulation clouds in the sky. Chapter 77, Executed. Duan Shuang's combat awareness was really powerful. He was once an elder of the sect's demon vanquishing hall and often drove a flying ship to slay demons. He naturally knew the pros and cons of the sect's worship like the back of his hand. Although the worship was powerful, it had a fatal flaw. It was not flexible enough. If a high-level cultivator got close to it, it would likely be struck down without any ability to resist. However, the flying ship had 3 elders presiding over it. It was not something he could break through easily. Furthermore, he was too far away and did not have time. He could only choose a direction to escape in. North, south, east, and west were all dead ends, but he knew that when a warship's bow cannon was raised or lowered, its speed would be slower than the others. This gave him a chance to live. Duan Shuang did not choose an underground location that was obviously safer. Instead, he risked his life and plunged into the tribulation clouds above him. The person facing tribulation charged into the tribulation clouds. Such an act of courting death could almost be regarded as contempt for the heavens. Then, 3 more pillars of light followed Duan Shuang into the tribulation cloud. This sort of undisguised provocation was simply unbearable. The 3 elders had already regretted raising the cannon, but it was already too late to stop. In the next moment, it was as if the world was enveloped by endless lightning. 3 bolts of lightning that were even more exaggerated than ordinary lightning struck directly at the 3 flying boats. Boom, boom. The first was the intense sound of a cannon being stuffed into the back of the ear. However, after the momentary pain in the ear, the world became only a buzzing sound. What followed next was weightlessness. Jiang Li, who was staying in the flying ship's engine room with more than 10 inner sect disciples, and using his spiritual qi to supply the flying ship to reduce the expenditure of spirit stones, clearly discovered that everything in front of him was floating for a short period of time. This meant that their flying ship was falling. The tribulation cloud, which should not have any intelligence, seemed to have been angered and dealt a heavy blow to everything that dared provoke it. None of the 3 flying boats were spared. Under the lightning tribulation, it was already the limit to keep the ship intact. However, a large number of runes on the ship were burned by the lightning. It was impossible to maintain flight. The huge flying ship landed on the ground and glided for a long time in the ruined city before finally stopping. Fortunately, all the cultivators on the ship were safe. Looking at Duan Shuang, he was obviously not so lucky. He was originally the target of the divine punishment. Out of the lightning bolts that covered the sky and the earth, 7 of them were headed towards him. That kind of power was something that even he could not resist after the heavenly lightning indestructible zombie core was completed, let alone now. As the 3 airships crashed to the ground, a black lump of coal fell from the tribulation cloud. Without sufficient imagination, one could not even make out the shape of a person from the lump. Is he still alive? Elder Zhang, who was gasping for air on the flying ship, realized that the tribulation clouds in the sky had yet to disperse. He felt terrible. The 3 precious warships of the sect had been struck down. How could that guy not die after bearing the brunt of the attacks? Was there still justice in this world? He and the other 2 elders could not be bothered to protect the other disciples in the ship. They hurriedly transformed into streaks of light and flew up to deal the final blow to that guy. However, before they arrived, the tribulation clouds in the sky began to slowly dissipate. When they arrived, there were only a dozen broken pieces of coal on the ground. After putting the pieces together, one could vaguely make out a shape that could barely be called a human. I can't find the fused golden core. With such a powerful thunderstorm, no matter how hard that golden core is, it can't possibly remain. The 3 elders were a little disappointed. They had suffered such heavy losses this time, but their possible gains had all dissipated under the lightning tribulation. Anyone would find this hard to accept. Forget it. It's good that the mission is completed. I'll go search and rescue the disciples first. I'll count the number of people and see how many outer sect disciples I lose this time. At their cultivation level, they basically did not need to worry about the sect's punishment anymore. The reason was very simple. There were not many people whose cultivation level was higher than theirs. Even if it was the scripture storage valley's valley master, he would at most say a few words to them, and there would not be any substantial punishment. In the flying ship that crashed, the uninjured inner sect disciples were all arranged to search for outer sect disciples. The thick-skinned Jiang Li was naturally among them. He had just become an inner sect disciple, and his cultivation was low. In the beginning, that elder did not plan to let him out. However, Jiang Li was abnormally persistent. He earnestly expressed that since he had already become an inner sect disciple, he should shoulder the responsibility of an inner sect disciple. The elder was speechless. Since when did this become the responsibility of inner sect disciples? However, since the traitor had already been executed, there was no longer any danger in the city. Since Jiang Li wanted to go, he would let him go. Jiang Li first changed into a white disciple uniform. Due to the lack of a suitable size, it looked a little inappropriate for him to wear it. However, this was still clothes that only inner sect disciples could wear. The word storage on his chest and the inner sect disciple token on his waist indicated that his identity had undergone a huge change. After leaving the flying ship, Jiang Li stood on the ground of Cloud Stream City again. However, the current Cloud Stream City was filled with broken walls and ruined land. It was no longer the bustling city from a few hours ago. At this moment, even if he compared it to the map, he would probably not be able to find the location. Jiang Li channeled the yin attribute spiritual qi into his eyes. The yin qi and death qi that filled the entire city had already vanished completely under the lightning tribulation. He could not find the Feng Shui Yin gate in that city with this method. Fortunately, the Yin burial coffin did not seem to have been damaged by the lightning tribulation. Jiang Li moved through the ruins using his connection to the artifact and quickly rushed over. Yin burial coffin rise. As Jiang Li struck out with his spell technique, a ruin suddenly exploded, and an ordinary grayish-black coffin flew out. The coffin began to automatically shrink in midair, and when it landed in Jiang Li's palm, it had already transformed into a palm-sized piece of wood. Jiang Li sensed the interior and was delighted in his heart. The concentration of yin qi was more than 10 times higher than before. It seemed that his thoughts were correct. Due to the previous lightning tribulation, the yin qi in this city was suppressed, and it was forced to find a place to escape. There were not many choices. One was the Feng Shui Yin gate, and the other was the Yin burial coffin that gathered the souls of most humans in the city. At that time, Jiang Li had been obstructed by the ghosts and souls he collected, so he was unable to leave with the coffin in a short period of time. So, he took a gamble and buried the coffin in the Feng Shui Yin gate. With these two factors combined, the Yin burial coffin became the only place in this city where the yin qi could escape to. Although most of the yin qi was dispersed by the lightning tribulation, just the remaining portion was enough to benefit it greatly. Chapter 78, Red-Coated Rat. Did the coffin's space increase? Jiang Li suddenly discovered that the things inside the coffin, like the damaged flying sword and the corpses of the cultivators, seemed to have become much smaller. Upon a closer look, he realized it was the space inside the coffin that had enlarged instead. He did not expect that filling a coffin with yin qi and soul could have such an effect. Or perhaps it was due to the special influence of the lightning tribulation that the coffin had changed. It was not that there were no storage artifacts in the cultivation world, but they were indeed rare. As far as he knew, many core formation elders did not have such a thing. Furthermore, the larger the space of the artifact, the higher the value of the artifact. Regardless of the reason, this was a pleasant surprise. After putting away the coffin, Jiang Li started to roughly search Cloud Stream City, and he hoped that he could rely on the direction in his memories to find the location of the inn from before. After he left, in order not to alert the enemy, he had not finished exchanging souls. According to the speed of exchange at that time, during the time he left, he would have accumulated at least a few hundred to 1,000 souls. If the soul-capturing bag was not destroyed by the lightning tribulation, this could be considered a good harvest. Squeak, squeak, squeak. At this moment, a huge rat in a red robe suddenly ran past the ruins not far away. Jiang Li looked familiar. Wasn't this the talking rat? He suddenly recalled what the rat had said about the dilapidated temple outside the city. A few drops of lamp oil could allow the rat's spirit to speak human language. Perhaps that dilapidated temple really had something good. With a thought, the chains on his waist flew out automatically. Jiang Li did not use the metal hook on the other end. This little rat's spirit was only so big. It would not be good if he accidentally killed it. The chains wrapped around the rat's spirit that was flying through the ruins. The 1.5 kilograms of weight did not have the slightest ability to resist as it was easily swept back to Jiang Li. With a plop, the red-coated rat fell to the ground. It raised its eyes to look at Jiang Li, but before Jiang Li could speak, the rat suddenly bounced up, its limbs frantically scratching the ground as it tried to escape. However, how fast were Jiang Li's legs? Seeing that the rat was about to run, he quickly kicked it and stepped on the tail behind it. Squeak, 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 squeak. This rat's luck was really not bad. Under the aftermath of such a terrifying thunder tribulation and the battle between golden cores, the entire city had been destroyed, but it could still keep its life. However, perhaps because he was badly frightened by the lightning tribulation, when he saw Jiang Li, the master who had treated him to a meal, he did not even greet him and just fled without any care. Wait a moment. The one who was greeting the small demons previously seemed to be Black Zombie. Wearing a mask, his voice and smell were completely different from Jiang Li's actual body. It was no wonder that the rat was so afraid of him. It could not recognize him at all. At this moment, the red-coated rat realized that its tail had been stepped on. In its anxiety, it turned around and bit down. However, it was not biting Jiang Li's shoe, but its own tail. Brother Rat, wait a moment. I don't mean any harm. Brother Rat, do you still remember this mask? I invited you to a banquet earlier. Jiang Li hurriedly stopped the red-coated rat from hurting itself. He took out a mask and showed it to the rat's spirit. Only then did the rat's spirit slowly calm down, but it still curled up on the ground and secretly raised its eyes to size up Jiang Li. Where are the gold, silver, and presents that I asked you to safeguard? The rat's head did not seem to be working well. Its bean-sized eyes darted around before it finally recalled something. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Master's immortal fortune is flourishing. Squeak, squeak. The gold and silver presents are all here. They're all under the ruins. The rat bowed to Jiang Li, but its action stunned Jiang Li. This posture did not seem right. Why did this look like the etiquette of a senior cultivator towards a junior? Oh, is that so? That's a shame. Brother Rat, do you still remember how many gifts we received during the banquet? Jiang Li's sudden question caught the rat off guard. There are probably hundreds. The red-coated rat stammered and threw out a vague number. Hearing this answer, Jiang Li's eyes narrowed slightly. When this rat heard that the banquet had gone on for more than 10 days, it did not have the slightest doubt. However, it was possible that it did not dare to question him. That's quite a lot. By the way, Brother Rat, last time your brother borrowed a lamp oil from me. He said he would return it to me in 2 days. Do you know where it is? Jiang Li acted as if he was asking for a loan, and spoke as if it was only natural. Ah, lamp oil. Master, you know that my family has just gone through that lightning tribulation. I'm afraid it can't be found now. When I find my brother's family, I'll definitely return the lamp oil to you. When the red-coated rat said this, it was obvious that its memory was incomplete, so it could only follow Jiang Li's words and blindly speak. Is that so? There's no other choice. Brother Rat, if you have something to do, you should go first. Finding your family is more important. Yes, 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 this rat will take its leave. The red-coated rat was overjoyed. After bidding farewell, it wanted to leave. However, it discovered that Jiang Li's foot still had no intention of moving away. Name Black Rat. Type Rodent Spirit. Level Unknown. Age Mature. Gender Male. Source of Nutrition Omnivorous. Habit Stealing. Note: not recommended for consumption. After using appraisal, Jiang Li saw a line of familiar words. Brother Rat, I thought about it. Since we are fated to be together, I can't just sit by and watch what happened to you. Brother Rat, why don't you stay here for the time being and let me help you? Jiang Li still had the same smiling expression, but the chains on his waist began to clatter. There's no need to trouble you, master. I can do it myself. The red-coated rat clearly also discovered that there was something wrong with Jiang Li, its pair of black bean eyes revealing a vicious glint. Slam! The bare rat tail was torn off, and the black rat's body instantly swelled up a few times. It suddenly jumped up from the ground, opened its pair of front teeth, and brandished a pair of pitch-black claws as it pounced towards Jiang Li's neck. However, what came at it was Jiang Li's right hand that was covered in wooden armor. Don't stand on ceremony with me. Jiang Li, who was prepared, grabbed the rat by the neck and pressed it hard onto the ground. Slash, slash, slash. The rat was still struggling crazily. Its pitch-black nails scraped across the wooden armor, leaving large fragments. Even Jiang Li could barely hold it down. It was not until the 4 golden needles pierced into the rat's limbs that the violent struggle finally slowed down and disappeared. Brother Rat, why are you so agitated? Look, you're already injured. You should quickly eat a medicinal pill to calm your nerves. Chapter 79, Another Seed. Squeak, squeak. The rat had 4 golden needles stabbed into its body. Jiang Li pressed it down hard on the ground, and its eyes kept bulging under the pressure. Just as the blood had reached its limit, one of the eyes of the red-coated rat suddenly exploded. A black blood arrow shot towards Jiang Li's eyes. Jiang Li instinctively raised his hand to block, but a portion of the blood still passed through the gaps between his fingers and shot into his eyes. A burning pain instantly appeared. Jiang Li felt as if his eyeballs were about to melt, and his vision immediately became blurry. Both eyes are corroded by poisonous blood. Added status, blindness. Detoxification status triggered, blindness removed. Added status, decreased vision. Decreased vision, minus plus. This damned rat actually had such a disgusting method. Jiang Li hurriedly pressed the minus button for 5 seconds before his blurry vision recovered. If he had not stabbed the 4 golden needles in time, he would have been defeated by a rat. Due to an unknown reason, the rat suddenly became much stronger. Its speed and strength were extremely exaggerated. If he was an ordinary qi refinement cultivator, his throat might be torn open in an instant. Jiang Li wiped away the smelly poisonous blood on his face, took out a few waste pills, and stuffed them into the rat's mouth. Squeak, wait, I have a secret, I have a big secret. The rat struggled and screamed. Jiang Li wanted to hear what else it had to say. However, after seeing the 4 golden needles being forced out of its body bit by bit, Jiang Li no longer hesitated, and he tore off the rat's front teeth before pushing 5 smelly and pitch-black waste pills into its stomach. The facts proved that even a rat who had lived in filth its entire life could not withstand the rich toxins of waste pills. Soon the rat started twitching. Its stomach heaved as if it was enduring immense pain. The dirty and black fur began to gradually turn white. The originally bloated rat body was like a deflated balloon. It quickly shriveled and even became skin and bones, looking extremely miserable. Bang! A pale yellow seed was spat out from the mouth of the red-coated rat. Name: spiritual root seed. Type: trash. Grade: unknown. Note: not recommended for consumption. As expected, Jiang Li was excited. However, it was different from the bean-sized seed in Jiang Li's hand. The seed in front of him was almost the size of a durian seed. It looked round and smooth, and it smelled fresh and delicious. Jiang Li knew that the thing had just come out of the rat's mouth. He felt disdain in his heart, but he could not help but bring it close to his nose to smell it. With just a sniff, his entire body involuntarily trembled, and his soul almost rose to the sky. That smell not only stimulated his sense of smell and taste to the extreme, but it also caused his spiritual qi to spontaneously boil. He had an irresistible desire for the source of the smell, as if eating this seed would allow him to break through to the foundation establishment realm on the spot. No, no, no. He would be doomed after eating this. Jiang Li swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and his mind finally prevailed. He forcefully suppressed the thought of swallowing the thing and threw the seed into the coffin. This kind of temptation was much stronger than the previous spiritual root seed. Even though he knew that this thing was fatal, it was still very difficult to resist it. It seemed that even if they were both spiritual roots, the difference between them was still very huge. After putting away the seed, Jiang Li squatted on the ruins and breathed heavily. The desire had not completely dissipated, just like when a drug addict acted up. His entire body felt uncomfortable and empty. He could feel his tongue and nose go numb. Just the smell was enough to keep him from tasting anything for weeks. Really, what a terrifying thing. After calming down for a long time, Jiang Li started touching the dying rat everywhere. Where was the golden core? Where was the golden core? Brother Rat, you should be the reincarnation of Elder Duan Shuang, right? You have such a huge golden core. There's no use in keeping it. Why not give it to me to safeguard it for you? However, after searching for a long time and even using his spiritual energy to probe, Jiang Li still did not find anything. The golden core was really not in the rat's body. After thinking for a moment, Jiang Li did not take back the golden needles. He even used the chains on his body to tie up the rat before stuffing it into the coffin. In the end, Jiang Li was still unable to find the soul-capturing bag. Instead, he encountered a few outer sect disciples who were lost on the way. Although those outer sect disciples were not familiar with Jiang Li and did not even speak with him, they had met once before. They were still extremely excited when they saw Jiang Li, but before they could even say the words, "Junior brother Jiang Li," they choked on their words and changed it with expressions of disbelief. Senior brother Jiang Li. Jiang Li was slightly unaccustomed to being called senior brother by an outer sect disciple who was much older than him. However, the cultivation world was like this. Age was never a problem. He had fought hard for the sect's reward, so how could he give it up? With a few people by his side, it was inconvenient for Jiang Li to do anything else, so he brought them back to the place where the flying ship had fallen. At this moment, there were already quite a number of outer sect disciples who had gathered here under the guidance and help of others. However, all of them had pale faces and were in quite a bad state. After all, he had just escaped death, and the effects of the lightning tribulation had yet to completely dissipate. If his condition could recover, Jiang Li might even be even more suspicious and even feed them a few waste pills just in case. At this moment, Jiang Li also saw Elder Zhang, who was standing beside the flying ship and studying the extent of the damage. He took out the purple talisman from his bosom and handed it over respectfully. Elder Zhang, thank you for the talisman. Elder Zhang looked at the damaged ship with a pained expression. It looked like this ship could still be salvaged. However, even the sect would have to pay a huge price for it. When he saw that it was Jiang Li, he squeezed out a benevolent smile and received the talisman. Then his face twitched again. This talisman was probably close to being unusable. What happened in the city? Tell me. At that time, the lightning tribulation had arrived abruptly, so they did not have the time to ask about it in detail. Now that the matter had been resolved, there were still many questions and doubts. It was time to understand what Duan Shuang had done in the city. The other outer sect disciples were questioned by the disciples of the law enforcement hall. As the winner who had found and killed 11 defected disciples, Jiang Li definitely knew more. Moreover, inner sect disciples were not under the jurisdiction of the law enforcement disciples, so it was naturally up to the elders to inquire about it. Chapter 80, Sin. What happened in the city? Tell me. Jiang Li had originally sought out Elder Zhang to provide information. The information he possessed was far from what he could handle by himself. After all, this was an important matter. If the sky collapsed, it should be held up by giants. He felt that there were some things that the sect needed to prepare for. Therefore, after tidying up his thoughts, he spoke about everything that had happened in the city. "You're saying that 11 disciples disappeared every day." Jiang Li did not say the information about the spiritual root seed directly. Although there was already a lot of evidence regarding this matter, if he risked his life to verify it, it might be enough to make the sect believe him. However, it could be seen from many places that this spiritual root seed was definitely not something that had only appeared recently. Furthermore, this thing could even control golden core cultivators. If this was not an exception, the things involved would probably be even more terrifying than Jiang Li imagined. If a mere Qi refinement realm cultivator revealed such a secret, even if this secret could really cause a huge change in the cultivation world, how could he not be killed along the way? At that time, if he risked his life to verify it, he would really die. On the other hand, Jiang Li could not explain why he knew so much. His earliest understanding of the spiritual root seed came from a name identified by appraisal. Coupled with the bold assumption and careful verification later, he had a rough understanding of it now. However, how could he explain the appraisal technique to the sect? It was possible that the sect would suspect him and treat him as a traitor, or discover some clues to investigate to the end. It was very likely that he would expose his own uniqueness. In the end, he might become the first unlucky person to die during the calamity of the spiritual root seed. The gains would not make up for the losses. Therefore, he only repeated the number 11 and described in detail the possibility that the missing outer sect disciples might be controlled or even possessed. He hoped that the sect could pay attention to this and investigate in detail from the perspective of possessing someone's body. From there, they would uncover all the parasitic cultivators with spiritual roots that might be hidden in the cultivation world. In fact, I'm not sure how many disciples went missing on the third day. However, 11 people did go missing 2 days ago. Furthermore, the senior and junior brothers who went missing were all found in the cave where the rebels were hiding. It's said that, when they disappeared, they were all scammed by disciples who were also missing. Jiang Li added in more detail again. Elder Jiang clearly had his own thoughts. Elder Jiang, when they were found, were they all unconscious? No one was actually killed. Jiang Li wondered if Elder Jiang had gotten wiser, but he still answered quickly. Yes, yes, yes. Moreover, the hair of all the unconscious disciples has turned white. Elder Jiang, did they all betray the sect and attack you instead? Jiang Li, yes, yes. Their behavior and actions are completely different. They must be controlled by someone. Elder Jiang, did the lightning tribulation suddenly start not long after they died? Jiang Li, yes, yes, yes. Wait, what? Why did he suddenly mention the lightning tribulation? Jiang Li hoped that the other party would notice the method of controlling cultivators. However, it was obvious that this elder's attention was not in the same direction as Jiang Li. He was clearly more concerned about their goal of controlling the outer sect disciples. However, it made sense. Jiang Li had gathered some other information and learned that the spiritual root seed even possessed a terrifying power that could control golden core cultivators. Therefore, he naturally placed great importance on this. However, the sect elder did not know about the matter of the spiritual root seed. In his understanding, it was just a few outer sect disciples in the Qi refinement realm who were controlled by others. Wasn't that a simple matter? Even he himself had 2 or 3 methods to do it, so it was not surprising that Duan Shuang, who was also a golden core cultivator, could. He was more concerned about Duan Shuang's goal. Jiang Li still wanted to say something, but when he thought about it, it seemed like if he said anything more, he would expose himself. Jiang Li dared not reveal the fact that he was concerned about appraisal. Between protecting himself and protecting others, Jiang Li's choice would not be unexpected at all. If he wanted to remind the sect, he could wait until he had a backer to officially acknowledge a master before finding a suitable opportunity to let the sect discover it. After all, there were still more than 2,000 ticking time bombs in the sect. As long as he handled it properly, he had 100 methods to make them unable to stay and reveal their true colors. Jiang Li was an inner sect disciple after all. Although saying this might feel like bullying others, it was not difficult for him to create trouble for a group of outer sect disciples with ulterior motives. Of course, there was clearly a better solution. Jiang Li would not foolishly spout nonsense now and throw himself into the fire. However, when Elder Zhang spoke about the lightning tribulation, Jiang Li was filled with doubt and interest towards it. After giving an affirmative reply, Elder Zhang revealed an understanding expression. No wonder it's like this. No wonder the lightning tribulation suddenly erupted after being entrenched in the sky for so long. I didn't expect that Duan Shuang would be so vicious. Seeing that he did not continue, Jiang Li took the initiative to ask, Elder Zhang, can you tell me about the lightning tribulation? You don't know about the lightning tribulation. That's right, you've just entered the sect at this age. It's normal for you to not know about it since you haven't been taught about it in the cultivation hall. Elder Zhang glanced at Jiang Li's slightly surprised expression, but when he saw Jiang Li's young appearance, he came to an understanding. You're an inner sect disciple now. There's no harm in knowing more about this divine punishment. Jiang Li, do you know what sin is? Elder Zhang threw out a new term, causing Jiang Li to be at a loss. Disciple doesn't know. Elder, please enlighten me. Sin is the bad karma that arises from evil deeds. It has many forms, and divine punishment is the heavenly punishment that is triggered by the accumulation of sins. As Elder Zhang explained, Jiang Li finally understood many things that he had been unable to figure out previously. It was no wonder that cultivators did not casually kill mortals. It was no wonder the sect only surrounded and did not attack when Elder Duan Shuang fled into the city. This was because the cultivators were afraid of being tainted by this sin. Sin was the measurement of evil deeds done by the intelligent beings of this world through the heavenly Tao. Generally speaking, killing one person would result in 1 unit of sin, while killing 10 people would result in 10 sins. One would more or less accumulate 1 unit of sin by committing minor deeds over time. When a person had bad karma on them, they would not be able to see much difference when it was little. It would not affect them at all. But if there were more than 100, that person would be covered in a black aura. Many people who were proficient in divination could tell at a glance. This type of person would normally be unlucky for a period of time. For cultivators, they would only be able to make it through a few years of seclusion, but for mortals, it was very easy for them to have a bad end. If there were more than 1,000 units of sins, they would have a foul smell in their mouths and would live alone from then on, hated by everyone. This kind of person had done too much evil. They would be surrounded by malevolent aura all year round. When everyone saw them, they would instinctively feel disgusted. Even their parents and family would not want to look at them anymore. However, for cultivators, there were still methods that could deal with this. Some of the less complicated spell techniques could change their auras and hide this abnormality. 10,000 units of sins was basically exclusive to cultivators. No matter how cruel and brutal an ordinary mortal was, it was very difficult for him to kill 10,000 people. At this level, the natural thing to occur would be the lightning tribulation that would cause countless cultivators to turn pale.